Hey everybody, Nevin Gusak, Populist Patriot. I'm going to talk about another article I found in The Guardian. Russian foreign minister praises Fox News coverage of war in Ukraine. Well, Fox News, that supposedly patriotic news network. Well, it's no secret that I don't like Fox Business and I don't like Fox and Friends. They have a very anti-labor position that's unequivocally pro-employer, pro-multimillionaire, pro-billionaire doing whatever the hell they want in American politics and economics. Fox News also, particularly Rupert Murdoch and his associates, have had close ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and it was complicit in the censorship and suppression of information and news within the People's Republic of China. One source even indicated that Murdoch also had deposits within the Cuban state banking system. Some of the Fox News hosts, like I believe his name is Jonathan Honig, praised China's labor conditions, said we should become more like China, where American workers should be even more overworked. So Fox News really is a network, one of the many networks on TV that I basically don't watch. It's really repellent on most grounds. So this piece of news was no surprise. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, has praised Fox News for its coverage, appearing on the Russian state-controlled Russia Today, or RT network, to hail the right-leaning U.S. cable channel whose primetime host Tucker Carlson has played down the invasion. And Minister Lavrov said, "We know the manners and the tricks that are used by the Western countries to manipulate media. We understood long ago that there is no such thing as an independent Western media. If you take the United States, only Fox News is trying to present some alternative point of view." So the article goes on saying, Russian media regularly plays clips of Carlson criticizing the U.S. and Ukraine, and he was still praising President Vladimir Putin hours before Russia invaded Ukraine almost 4 weeks ago. In contrast, as Moscow's bombardment escalated, Russian apologism by numerous Fox News hosts, commentators, and guests were being corrected on air by the network's own national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin, to her credit. So that kind of goes on and on. I'm not going to read the entire article. But the fact of the matter is we have an issue where you have useful idiots on the right that have served Russia's interests, all because corporate interests and corporate greed, as well as this notion that Reagan and Bush defeated the Soviet Union and that the Cold War has ended. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Also, there are nationalist-oriented conservatives and national populists that feel that Putin has rejuvenated Russia, that Russia is a sterling example of Christian nationalism. And I think that comes into play as well. You have nationalist-leaning conservatives like Tucker Carlson and Michael Savage, those surrounding publications like the American Conservative, even some of the figures that were present at the National Conservatism Conference in October, November of 2021 in Orlando, Kissimmee, Florida. You have those individuals that really feel we need to engage Russia, that we should include them even more in the world economy. We should join them in anti-terrorist measures against Islamic terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact of the matter is I've documented in my books, as I've documented on my show, as analysts like J.R. Nyquist have documented, the fact of the matter is Russia continues to build its military and subversive apparatus against ultimately the United States and directly against the United States. They continue to back a variety of anti-American dictatorships throughout the world, most of your continents, Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and even Europe. If you look at Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus, They continue to have undertake war plans in cooperation even with communist China, clearly against the United States of America. And this has been revealed by defectors from the Russian, by the post 1991 defectors from the Russian GRU, the FSB, the SVR, as well as the Russian military, and also some Russian high ranking government officials and economists. Andrei Ilyanov, amongst other Russian officials and economists, they all basically say that Russia has not changed its stripes, that it's continuing to prosecute the Cold War against the United States. So, and many of your paleo conservatives, right wing populists, and nationalist conservatives, they don't understand that Russia, or they don't want to understand, they don't want to hear for whatever reason, that Russia continues to pose a geopolitical threat to the United States, to our independence and sovereignty. Then there's another current of the American right, and that is your sort of so-called establishment Republicans and even Tea Party Republicans. They've kind of become Johnny-come-latelys to the notion that Russia posed a threat to the United States. But back in 2012, all your Tea Party senators, Marco Rubio, Ron Johnson, and others, they all voted to give permanent normal trade relations to the Russian Federation. Club for Growth opposed tariffs on goods dumped by state-owned or state-subsidized or state-controlled Russian industries into the American market. The Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute all supported permanent normal trade relations for the Russian Federation. Other congressmen and senators that were quote unquote conservative, well, they all said, like Devin Nunes, that the Cold War ended. That sure, Russia's an authoritarian dictatorship, but the Cold War ended, so let's further open up trade relations with the Russians. And you take a look at Orrin Hatch, who recently was deceased, and even Senator John McCain, both to their credit, they said that Russia was an authoritarian state and even conducted anti-American activities that harmed America's geopolitical interests. But they said, well, nevertheless, we should pass PNTR, permanent normal trade relations, for the Russian Federation. Now, you're probably thinking, why in the hell are they saying these crazy things when the truth was known about the threat of Russia? Well, the answer to that is greed is their creed. And they're all creatures of their corporate donors. And they're all believers in deregulated trade. Deregulation and money is the gods of the libertarians and the corporate conservatives. So on the one hand, you have the right-wing populists and the national conservatives, many of them thinking, Russia, the Cold War has ended, and now Russia's becoming a Christian nationalist state that's banned, that hates abortion and doesn't like the LGBTQ people and all the rest of it. And so they're supporting Putin and the United Russia Party on that count. And then you have, the corporate conservatives, most of your Reaganites and libertarians, your fusionists that are saying, yeah, the Cold War has ended. And yeah, Russia's not a nice country, but, the hell with it. Let's just make a lot of money, because we're not independent anyways, because we're funded by corporate America. And we're paralyzed by this libertarian trade policy. So it's no small wonder that Fox News, which has had close ties with the People's Republic of China, well, now they're praising Russia. So that's not inconsistent with the values of Fox News. And it's not to say any of the other networks are any better. I mean, CNN, hell, Ted Turner was, worked hand in glove with the Soviets and the Soviet state-controlled media apparatus like Gostel Radio. Ted Turner, since 1982, was best buddies with Fidel Castro, and CNN sure had its privileges in Cuba, and, CNN had to toe the line with covering Cuba. Because God forbid, if you don't toe the line in countries like Cuba. If you're a foreign media organization and you don't toe the line of, the dictatorships ruling Cuba or the Soviet Union, well, your asses are going to be thrown out. And that's happened with American media correspondents like Nicholas Danilov, for example, in the Soviet Union. He had his ass kicked out when you don't toe the line. So no surprise about Fox News. This is why that media needs to be decentralized. We need to go back to home-based medias. There also needs to be congressional hearings, and I would also call for the nationalization and federalization of PBS and NPR, into creating them into counter-propaganda organizations that can expose to the American public the international propaganda activities of our geopolitical enemies. Combined with the fact, let's decentralize the newspapers, let's decentralize our print and electronic media of all sizes, bring our media back to the days it was before Ronald Reagan started and Bill Clinton started the deregulation of broadcast media. Let's bring it back to those days. Small town newspapers, bring it all back to that. Bring honesty back into journalism, real investigative and honest reporting. Bring back things like the fairness doctrine, truly have both sides so people can make their own educated decisions, and cut back on the number of media outlets that billionaires can buy. I'm sorry, I'm not for people like Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post. I would have axed that. I would have axed that shit right at the start. That shouldn't happen. I'm not saying rich people shouldn't have media, but this is ridiculous because then they're going to create them into potentially their own propaganda organizations. And when you have over-centralized power in the form of a totalitarian collectivist government or over-centralized private power, that's where you're going to have problems. And that's why in our current system, or in America, what radical civic nationalists want is a true middle ground where we have some level of authoritative government that will serve as a mediator so that we don't have excessive, concentrated corporate monopolistic power over important institutions like the media. Thank you all, and have a good night. More broadcasts to come.